And the thing is to remember when you're doing budget, yes, you have a template you pulled forward, but every month is unique.
This is the business of art.
G'day, Paul here with the Business of Art, where creativity and commerce come together. In this video, I'm talking with financial coach Ben Muphy. This is actually the second conversation with Ben. The first one was around how to control spending, and I'll link that up in the show card there and also in the description below. So you can pop over and watch that one if you haven't seen it. This one's around how to start budgeting, and for us as artists, I know a lot of artists really struggle with the idea of budgeting. I struggle with it myself. It's a very difficult thing to maintain as an ongoing process. It's all good and well to budget a show that has a start and end point, but trying to manage your finances week in, week out can be very difficult. And so we talk around how to start budgeting, how to push through the overwhelm, because sometimes it just feels way too hard. And we also talk a little bit about how to budget on a fluctuating income, which we as artists are often dealing with. So here it is. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll talk to you soon.
The first kind of step into things is really about creating a budget. What's the first thing I need to do?
Just sitting down and pulling up your current bills to see what's outgoing. And then look at your statements to see what are you paying for, just to get a feel, and then start doing a budget off of that. And the first thing you always want to write in is what's coming in. What is that income coming in? Now, if you've got a variable type position where your income fluctuates, you would go off of a middle section or the minimum. So if you want to be safe, let's say 2 to 3 months out of the year, this is the minimum you're going to get. What you would do is you would budget each month off of that minimum, and anything above that would go to what we call a list of designations. So if you're getting out of debt, you just pay more on debt that month if you went above this limit. If you're out of debt, that excess would go into whatever you're saving or putting towards. Basing your budget off of that, you start with what comes in, and then you start going through and you write out what your outgo is. We always teach it takes 3 months, 90 days of time before you have a working budget. The first month is the worst and the hardest. The first month you'll be adjusting the budget several times throughout the first month because you forgot stuff. And then the second month of less adjustments. Third month it'll get more of a working. And then the thing is to remember when you're doing budget, yes, you have a template you pulled forward, but every month is unique. There's various softwares. I do use the Ramsey Solutions one, the every dollar one, because when my wife and I first started doing budgets, she had an Excel sheet, I couldn't read hers, she couldn't read mine. It was a mess. I mean, if there was frying pans, they'd have been flying around in the room. It was just a mess. That was like horrible time. Every dollar had just come out, and then I tried it out, and I said, "Hey, sweetie, look at this. Can you read and understand this?" She goes, "Yes. Let's use this." So that's how we got onto that one, and we've been using it ever since. So
Every Dollar is the online budgeting software provided by Dave Ramsey Solutions, yeah?
It is free to use. The free version means you just input in your expenses.
How about somebody who's struggling to, like, they've had a go, they feel like it's too hard, or they don't feel like they're winning with it? I guess, I think it's one of kind of taking control of your money, I find, is one of those things that it can feel daunting. It can feel really frustrating. What would you say to someone who's wanting to start this, but that sense of overwhelm is there? How do they kind of push through that?
We have them focus on one thing at a time, and that's very important. One of the biggest problems people do is they get overwhelmed because they try doing too many things. And so by focusing, just get that $1,000 saved. Listen, don't worry about anything else. Let's get the $1,000 saved, start there. It's all about just focusing on one step at a time and get them to start thinking about having goals. Most people you can help get them to see the light at the end of the tunnel, start having hope, start getting them to envision moving forward even when they have setbacks, because you always remind them, you are in a better position than you were before we sit down to talk, because you've already done X, Y, and Z. You've done this already. Yes, you had these setbacks, but you didn't go into further debt. So, you know, making sure to emphasize what it is they've accomplished so far as we go along.
So I guess for someone who is wanting to start, wanting to find a way forward, don't be discouraged if you try and fail. It's just like any habit that you're changing, is you have to keep the fact that you're continually attempting to change the habit is good, and that's going to see you eventually be able to change if you just stick with it. One last question. I'm an artist, so my pay, and you kind of referenced this a little bit before in something else that we talked about. So my pay week to week, fortnight to fortnight, month to month changes a lot. You know, it can be up and down. So for me to start looking at budgeting, I think before you said to work off the minimum, is that kind of the approach to take, and then just look at everything else as a bonus, and then kind of deciding where to assign that extra to?
Yeah. And what I would say is, if your minimum will cover all your basic expenses, budget off of that. If you have a scenario where you know for sure that you've got 1 or 2 or 3 months out of the year in which your minimum income coming in does not cover your bases, what you would want to do is set aside a emergency fund specific for those months. So in the good times, you put money to that account set aside, and it's specific for those months that you know it's going to be low. So if you have a seasonal type work where 3 or 4 months out of the year your income's way down, but in the prime of it's way up, you'd make sure when you're way up there you're setting money aside so that you even out and you have a minimum bar. So your minimum bar is what you need to pay your bills and put food on the table. Your basics, paying rent or mortgage, utilities, food and gas for the vehicle and stuff, and then if needed, clothing. But usually, unless you have a small child who grows really fast, you're usually pretty good on clothing. So having once you cover that, if your minimum is still above that, you can just go off of that. If it's below that, you would want to set money aside to cover that gap between it, so that you're not short and having to tap into your emergency fund. Some businesses run that way too. They're seasonal, and so what they do is they put aside a big chunk during their busy season, and then they'll live off of that big chunk they set aside during the slow season.
Yep. So really, it kind of does come back to just knowing your numbers, planning ahead a little bit, and just putting some little things in place so that you are ahead of the game rather than constantly chasing.
Yeah. You got to tell your money where to go, and that means knowing what it takes to live, basically, so that you can tell your money to go here, here, and here, instead of it telling you where to go.
There you have it. I think that is a really great phrase, that we have to tell our money where to go. I think that's a real struggle for a lot of us. I know it's something that I struggled with a lot for a very long time. You just don't have the awareness of where our money is going because we just don't track it. And that first step of becoming aware is that first step in being able to really take control and budget better and grow wealth in the long term. I think there were some really great points that Ben gave us in that video, and a couple of things that I really want to highlight. The first one is that it can take anywhere up to 3 months, maybe longer, before this becomes a habit. I got to be honest, for me it's been over 3 months where I'm trying to do this and become habitual in the actual budgeting process, and it's hard. It really is hard, and don't beat yourself up about it. That was the other thing Ben said, that we are going to fail, and as long as we get back up and try again, we're winning. And I think that's the thing to remember, that it's not an easy process to get into the habit of, particularly if you've never been shown how to do it before, if it's something you've never done before. So don't beat yourself up about it. Just get back up, have another go, and just keep building your awareness, and it will become habit in time. I think that's a really great thing for us to remember. The other thing that I think is really important for us to remember is that sense of planning for the lean months. That, you know, sometimes our income fluctuates quite heavily, and being able to set aside some money in a storehouse, a separate account that we don't look at month to month, week to week, whatever, that just sits there and slowly builds. And it doesn't have to be a lot every week, every fortnight, every month. But when that month comes in you know, 6, 8, 12 months time, just putting that little bit of money aside has helped to actually create that buffer that makes life easier in those times. Really important stuff for us to think about. And that comes down to awareness, that comes down to a little bit of planning, and just a little bit of sacrifice in those other weeks where, you know, we get that bit of income influx. Don't spend it all, put a little bit of it aside, because you know you're gonna need it later, and it just feels less of a pinch. You're gonna thank yourself later when you hit that leaner month. I really hope you found some use in that. I hope it helps you get started. Let me know in the comments if you've been struggling with the idea of budgeting as much as I have. I think it would be great for us to just build a little community of people that are able to talk and just help each other out and encourage each other to get through this and stay on track. So if you want to be part of that conversation, then let me know down below. Thanks very much for watching. If you found something useful in this video, please hit the like button, subscribe. It helps me know that this is of value to you. And of course, if you got something useful out of this, there's probably a chance you know someone else that would find some benefit to it as well. So let them know it's here, share it with them, tag them in the comments, whatever you've got to do to pay it forward so we can help each other out. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time.